So the news out of Haiti has been awful and terrifying. For months now, the country has seen violent gangs take more and more control. It's had a massive effect on every aspect of life, and artists are living in a lot of fear. Today on the podcast, how musicians are caught up in the middle of the crisis in Haiti. I'm Alamin Abdul-Mahmoud. This is Commotion. So you and I have been seeing the same images in the news over the last few weeks. We've seen armed gangs that have taken over huge parts of Haiti's capital. That means right now, going to work or just to the market can be a life or death decision for some folks. And in some cases, so can making music. Haiti's artists are constantly caught in the middle of this conflict, and sometimes that looks like canceled shows. But for some artists, it means being kidnapped or forced to perform for a gang or held for ransom. To tell us more about what's going on, Jacqueline Charles is here. Jacqueline is an award-winning journalist with the Miami Herald. And a few months back, she wrote about the Haitian artist Boric de Latale, who was arrested in Port-au-Prince. I think Boric's story gets at the dilemma that some artists are facing right now in Haiti. Here's what Jacqueline had to say.
So he and his co-artists, according to them, they were on their way to go film a video shoot. Yeah. And on their way, they were stopped by the police and they ended up getting arrested. And the allegation from the authorities was that they had ties to gangs, and they were actually, where they were headed was this kidnapping lair called Village de Dieu. It's a huge slum where a lot of people live, but it's also that's gang controlled, and where victims of kidnappings are often taken by a particular gang, and they're held there, and the police actually have absolutely no access to it. The last time the police went in, several of them were killed. So this really raised a huge question in the society about artists and whether and what their roles and responsibilities are. But it also showed as well as like how on edge the security force was, because this was at a time when we were starting to increasingly see gangs become more powerful. I mean, this issue with this crisis that's happening this week has actually been unfolding for years. Right. Even before the assassination of the Haitian president in 2021. It's just that now it's hit this crescendo.
Right. Boric's story, to me, gets at this larger problem that we're talking about, which is the idea of, Haitian police could arrest this person because they think that this artist is making a choice. Some of the artists in Haiti are saying, we don't really have a lot of choices right now. What is the dilemma that artists are facing right now?
We have to remember two things. These armed groups are made up of a lot of mostly young men. There are some women. Increasingly, we're starting to see reports about that. But they're basically young, disaffected youth who are in these ghettos, slums, working class neighborhoods, whatever the word that people want to, feel comfortable with. But they are part of the society. They're there. They're living in these communities. And so are the artists. They're living in these communities. They're writing about things that are unfolding, that are happening in these communities. And so what you start to see, though, is this intersection. Whereas even before this particular incident happened, I want to take a step back. Before this particular incident happened and became this whole public debate, we were seeing incidents where very well-known established Haitian artists were basically being asked to go and perform inside these gang-controlled neighborhoods. And some of them started to lose fans because people were like, okay, they're paying them with blood money. They're paying them with money that they collected as part of the ransom. Sure. And what we started hearing from some of these artists or their promoters was like, yeah, but we didn't have a choice. You get a phone call and they tell you that, you got to be here. What can you do? And then the other argument was that, well, the people who live in these communities, they deserve to have music too. They deserve to have entertainment. They shouldn't be held hostage by this crisis. And so this is when you started to see this. It's like, artists going and playing and not really standing up. And in the country where the artists are so powerful and have such a powerful voice, how do you do it? So in this story with Bourrique de l'Atelier, that was the issue that I wanted to explore. That here you have the police arrest an artist on suspicion of their gang ties, but at the same time, this was part of a larger debate and discussions about artists who have been forced to play either because somebody in their team got kidnapped or they live in these communities and literally had like an invisible gun to their head and had no choice.
Mm-hmm. This is, I think, what you've just laid out is a perfect illustration of the dilemma, because it's like this very idea of it's very easy for people on the internet to see, an artist is going to play a show at the behest of this gang that perhaps have an affiliation with them. But the thing that you just mentioned is the thing I want to get at, which is like sometimes these artists get a phone call, maybe they conduct the first phone call, maybe they conduct the second phone call. I don't know what happens if you duck the third phone call, saying you need to come and play here. So what happens if these artists say no or speak out against these gangs, do you think?
Well, what they've told me, some of the promoters, is that no, it's not an option. And that when on the other end of the phone call, you're being told where your mother is at. You're being told where your sister or wife, they know where you live. And people just really do not feel that they can say no, or somebody in their entourage is kidnapped and held for ransom. And sometimes they're told, no, we don't want you to pay any money, but we want you to do is for you to come play. And so this is not a black and white situation often where you have some individuals who are just, using their affiliation with gangs to make money. I think in the very early stages of this, that was what the debate or the criticism was. But as this crisis has deepened and has expanded, we're seeing artists now being pulled into it and being affected in different kinds of ways.
In your piece, you talk to music promoters as well as artists. So let's talk a little bit about the music promoters, because they're caught in the middle in a different way, I think. Like one told you, working the business is like walking through a ring of fire. How is that for them? How do music promoters navigate this space?
You're a music promoter, you promote a particular artist, and then you get this phone call. And, at the end of the day, it's up to that artist on whether or not that artist is going to perform. But sometimes, the artist doesn't even know who the client is on the other end until the artist shows up, because the music, that artist, may or may not live in Haiti. They just may be on tour in the country, but the promoter is living there.
They just know it's been scheduled for them. They don't know where they're going.
Exactly. Yeah, sure. So that's what they talked about, the difficulty. Or if you are going to have a huge show, a concert, and you have to go through gang territory someplace, what do? There's a story that was shared with me where a particular artist was on tour, and the gangs were gang members, they were fans, and they stopped the bus. And the artist, what do you do? I mean, it's because again, no one wants to be billed as somebody who is tight with these guys or in with them. But at the same time, you have to function, you have to survive, eat and live in this society. Sure. So how do you find that balance, and where do you find that cushion that there is this sort of arm's length?
The effect of this, though, is that it's meant some artists end up not going back to Haiti to perform, right? Or some festivals have completely left the country and decided to relocate somewhere else while this is happening. Can you just talk a little bit about that, about where some of those relocations have been?
So one of the unspoken impact of this gang crisis, the violence and the kidnapping, has truly been the effect on the music industry in Haiti. Yeah. And what we have seen in the last couple of years is not just a cancellation of huge festivals like Sumfest, because, for instance, Sumfest right now usually would take place on the northern outskirts of Port-au-Prince on what they called the Acadian coast of Haiti. And so it's, beach, but now that area has been overtaken, by gangs. You have to go through gang territory to get there. And then when you're there, you're also surrounded by some of these different groups. Sure. And so they haven't been able to do that. And then what we're also seeing is that, when you add in the COVID, what happened around COVID
Yeah.
and those restrictions that were happening. So in the last couple of years, especially since January, when the Biden administration in the United States basically started offering up this 2-year humanitarian parole program, which basically allowed nationals of Haiti, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela to legally migrate to the United States temporarily as long as they had a financial sponsor, we started to see a number of artists who started to come here and, hoping that they can make it big, in the United States because they had a fan base. We see this throughout Latin America.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a very different game when you're no longer in that country and you're trying to come here. But we have now seen a lot of, and also what has also pushed it is not just the violence with the gangs and the kidnappings, but a lot of artists had a very difficult time not being able to get U.S. visas, either because the U.S. Embassy hasn't really been operating and there was a huge backlog, or artists were like getting their visas canceled. So all of this has affected that music industry. I was in Haiti in December, and I have to tell you, I actually kind of like had a little bit of a smile because I am a fan of Haitian music.
Sure.
And I started seeing a lot of billboards up, for various tours of the artists. And I said, okay, they're starting to come back, but it's very difficult because they do have a large fan base in a lot of these communities that are under gang control. And the artists just are not sure about taking that kind of risk because you don't know, is somebody going to get held up? Are you going to become like, the savage jackass and get arrested because you're accused of having gang affiliation because you're going to a community to play?
Yeah. I want to go back to a thing that you mentioned earlier, this idea of like you're an artist and you're just on your tour bus and you get pulled over because some gang members are fans of your music, and then suddenly you sort of have this association. Because to me, like, this is connected to this debate that is happening over whether you can reasonably use an artist's work to connect them to crime. And this debate has been so frustrating in the United States, particularly when it comes to drill and trap music, because that music can have really intense subject matter, but it's also art. It is meant to be consumed as art. It's meant to be consumed as, sort of storytelling. Do you see critics end up making a differentiation between the songs and gang culture, or are they sort of one in the, do they end up being lumped in as one and the same, do you think?
So we're going through this in Florida because there's been a trial with a rapper, and they were trying to use his lyrics as part of a conviction. And I know in the UK, this has actually been studied, and there are actually documented cases where this has been brought to in court. And, but it takes me back to like gangster rap, right? When that genre first started gaining in popularity and people didn't know what to do with it. And there was a lot of accusations going back and forth about the role and responsibilities of artists and what you need to do. One of the things that I've realized in terms of Haiti is that there's a particular genre of music called rabade. And it's the music of the streets, right? It's the music of what is happening in these communities. I remember a couple of years ago, I wrote the story about this song called Madame Papa. And it was these young artists who didn't even have a birth certificate, just to tell you about their upbringing and what they were. And they basically recorded this song on like their phone, but it became the anthem of the streets. And so I think that if you really want to get the tempo of the country, you have to listen to the street sound. You have to listen to the music. You have to recognize that you have this. There's a symbiotic relationship, but where does it cross the line? And I think that that's the challenge. I personally do not think that you should be using the music, artists' music to try to prosecute them. I've been friends with a lot of artists, rappers who they are not the person that you see in the video. In their private lives,
quite often they're
completely different.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. There's often this distance between the persona you adopt for the music versus your the life that you live. Look, you write about how musicians use their popularity to become elected as senators or congressmen or even president. I'm interested in that dynamic because in this moment, we can sort of see the power that artists have, in Haiti, and the way that communities kind of look to them for authority. But in this moment, that gets a little bit conflicted. So what can artists do in the face of this moment?
So this has been what some critics will say the missed opportunity. Haiti in the last couple of years had a very famous president who was an artist, Sweet Mickey, Michel Martelly. And, he went on to become president. There are a number of artists who ran for office in parliament and they won, parliamentarians. And Haitian music, has a lot of challenges, right? The ability to make money, stopping this whole Haitian version of payola. How do you get copyright for songs? So when you talk to a lot of artists, what they really wish is that their fellow artists who went on, to be in government, that they actually did more for the industry itself and really try to fix the industry. And what, has happened in some cases that their relationship with these individuals who have since gone on to win office can become a liability because fans like music and they're into politics, but they don't necessarily want their music mixing with the politics.
Right.
And so this has also been another fine rope of how do you balance this? And then in today's climate, what you find and what people say is that, yes, artists carry a lot of weight, what they say, but when they misstep, whether they get too involved politically or too involved in an issue, it can have the ramifications where it affects their bottom line. It affects their music, where you lose your fan base or you lose your ability to be influential. Sure. So, and I think that this is just not, isolated to the Haitian culture or the Haitian music industry, but I think we see it throughout. Whenever we see, the days of the Harry Belafontes, I don't think that that's come back. Right. And it's like, how do you carve that image away from your music, but use your music to influence and to be that influential voice? And when I look at recent history, I see artists are constantly struggling with this and they haven't really been able to have that impact. I mean, Sonny Bono became what I think was mayor or something. Yeah. And then people almost after a while, they sort of forget that other life that they had, and then they see them in this new picture. But if you can have the two mesh and really have a powerful impact.
There's a really striking scene in the Bob Marley movie that just came out recently where Bob Marley sort of appears to be the only person who can unite the gangs that have been warring, and so that's the role that he's called on to sort of perform, and he's very reluctant to do that because he doesn't see that as a role of the artist, and then by the end of the movie he's trying to embrace that as his responsibility that he's going to take on. Do you see a role for artists right now in this moment? Because you wrote this piece in August, so it's been 6-7 months or so. The situation's gotten worse since then. Gangs are more empowered. What does the role of the artist look like right now? What does the situation for artists look like going forward?
Because you're talking about a society that's polarized, that's divisive, that's dividing, that has different opinions. Yeah. So, years ago when Haitians were being accused of bringing AIDS, the Haitian community basically shut down the Brooklyn Bridge because we said, no, this is not us and we don't accept, the CDC labeling. People found something to unite around. But when it comes to politics and it comes to the country's future and it comes to this crisis, we are divided. There is not a unifying, opinion. And so I think until you have the community, the country that can really unify around one message and one theme, the artists have to still kind of stay on the sideline as a united front. They have the ability to unite. They have the ability to have their voices heard, but it has to be something that everybody can agree on. And I'm not sure that we're there yet, because even when we say we want a better future for Haiti, we disagree about what that better future for Haiti looks like. We disagree about who should or should not be in that future. I mean, that's the conversation that's happening right now. There's a push by Canada, the United States, CARICOM to have this presidential council. They're saying that it's inclusive, and there are Haitians saying, no, it's not. It's elitist. It doesn't include the streets. It doesn't include the gang members. It doesn't include this. It doesn't include that. It doesn't include the youth. I mean, how do you achieve something that everybody can say, I'm okay with this, and we're going to drive this bus to the next stop? And I think that when you get there, the artists will get on the bus and they will be able to sway the population, their fans with them. But for now, the fans are like, you know what? If you get behind this horse and this one turns, then I'm going to leave you because, I like your music, but I don't agree with your politics.
Jacqueline, that is a complicated place, but a good place to leave it. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Jacqueline Charles is an award-winning foreign correspondent for the Miami Herald. She reports on Haiti and the English-speaking Caribbean. She's in Miami. I'm Alamin Abdul-Mahmoud, and you're listening to Commotion. Look, before we go, I just wanted to tell you about a conversation that is coming up on Commotion. Fortessa Latifi has written a piece for Cosmopolitan. It's called The Parenting Influencers Who Won't Stop Posting Their Children. Fortessa takes us behind the camera to reveal what some of these kids actually end up going through. And honestly, the stories are heartbreaking. I want to play you a part of our conversation, starting with a clip from a former child influencer. They're older now, and they chose to be anonymous. Here's a little bit of what they had to say.
And a lot of people think that creating content is super easy and that it doesn't take a lot of work, but it is a full-time job, and we'd have to sit there doing takes until like 1 or 2 a.m. for a picture or a video, trying our hardest to make sure that our smiles were perfectly right and we stuck to the script and all these different things.
That's a harrowing kind of little clip. I think like trying to imagine literal children, being awake until the middle of the night, trying to get the correct takes of a smile so that their parents can post this, picture perfect kind of childhood that doesn't really exist. What do you think about that anecdote? How do you think that anecdote tells the larger story of what child influencers go through?
I think it shows how little of a separation there is between your work and your life when you're a child influencer. So this is really different from child actors where they go on set and there are people who are like specifically delegated to make sure that they don't work too many hours or that they have like a tutor on set or, they have to wrap by 5 p.m. because the kid is 12 years old. And there's none of that when it's at home, right? It's up to the parents completely and there's just no boundary.
That is a bit of my conversation with Fortessa Latifi. You can catch our whole chat next week on Commotion. That is it for the podcast today. Remember, you can listen to any episode of the show anytime you like, wherever you get your podcasts. Tomorrow on the show, we're having an in-depth conversation about Sydney Sweeney. And the reason we're having that conversation is because it appears that no one can be normal about this actress. There's something happening where the conversation about her ends up going places that are just too crazy and too wild, and we're going to get some people here who can talk about it intelligently. Finally, I'm excited about that. In the meantime, check us out on Instagram. We are at Commotion CBC. My name is Alamin Abdul-Mahmoud. I will see you tomorrow.